Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Planning Committee West for Somerset Council. It's the 19th of March. My name is Simon Coles. I'm the chair of this committee. Welcome to our meeting. We're not anticipating a fire drill today, so if the alarm sounds, would you please leave the building by the doors indicated and gather in the safe point, which is the car park at the rear of the building. Okay, thank you. This meeting will be recorded and will also be streamed on YouTube, as is our practice. Therefore, any members of the public present should be aware that they may be recorded, even if they are not participating in the meeting. If this causes you any concern, please let me know as soon as possible, and we can make sure that your wishes are heard with. Okay. Good afternoon, colleagues. Right. Let's start with apologies for absence.
I have no apologies, Chair.
No apologies. Okay, thank you. And item 2 on our agenda, minutes from the previous meeting.
Chair, with members' indulgence, one slight correction to make under declaration. Just record that Councillor Rosemary Woods declared that she was predetermined in the agenda item 6. Take no part in the item. Results are called.
Thank you. That will be in the minutes as amendment. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Sorry. Can I see somebody propose that? Thank you, Andy, and a seconder. Thank you, Derek. And those in favour of approving those minutes with the amendment? Thank you. Pass. Thank you. Okay. Declarations of interest. I'm going to start. I'm going to start. I suspect it's true of the rest of us as well. Item 5. The applicant's partner is a council and known to myself and all of you. So I'm making that declaration, and I suspect that will be a blanket declaration from all of us. I'm not seeing anybody suggesting they don't know him. So, okay, that's fine. If we can repeat that, please, Steve. Thank you. Okay, public question time. Stephen, have we got any?
No questions, Chair.
None today. Okay, we're moving into the agenda proper, which is planning application 3/26/24/002, which is at the Blue Anchor, Cleve Hill, Watchet, and that's pages 23 to 34 of papers agenda pack. And we're going to turn to Bryony, who's our presenting officer. Good afternoon, Bryony, and welcome.
Good afternoon, thank you. Shows the site location plan with the former Blue Anchor Hotel, now known as Anchor's Drop, outlined in red with access fees. Let's start again. Oh, there we go. Okay, good afternoon. We'll start again. Okay, so this shows the site location plan of the Anchor's Drop, formerly the Blue Anchor, with the access from the B1319. Okay, that way. The Google view of the site. This shows the existing site plan and elevations of the building. And the proposed plans and elevations. I think there's a slight amendment to the report at this point. So the report states there were 6 bedrooms for the holiday accommodation. Those were actually hotel accommodation. So on the proposed plans, the 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms shown in blue will remain part of the hotel, and the rest of the white be the holiday accommodation. So it'll be a 4-bed, 2-bath, rather than the 6-bed, 4-bath as previously stated in the report. And then the area in green is the owner's accommodation. There are no external alterations proposed. So a view of the site with the new rock armour which has been put in place, which then applies for policy CC3 about coastal change management, which states that if an area is to be protected by new or existing sea defences and it's for tourism purposes, it's acceptable. An external view of the site. A view from the car. Site. The key considerations is it's considered to comply with policies CC3, OC1 and EC9 of the West Somerset Local Plan. It's not considered to have a significant impact on the visual or residential immunity of the area. Therefore, recommended for your approval, subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, this application is that better? Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you, Chair. As you stated earlier, this application before us today because of the applicant is married to a councillor, so that's why it's obviously here, and it's recommended be granted for planning permission. You can't hear me now. Is that better? Okay. Obviously, I said at the beginning, this application before us today because obviously the applicant is married to a local councillor. Obviously, the application is to be granted for permission, so it wouldn't have come to us if it wasn't that the member was actually married, but the local councillor was married to the applicant. Looking at the executive summary, obviously it says that it complies with CC3, the coastal change management, OC1, open countryside development, and EC9 tourism. So it complies to the policy, so I'm happy to, Chair, to recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We do have a public speaker on this. So we'll get to the public speaker first, and then we can open to the committee. Marcus, would you come to the desk and, as per normal, as you well know, you have 3 minutes. And that, of course, doesn't start until you start speaking. Good afternoon and welcome to my committee.
As well. As I said, thank you, Chair. I decided I would speak after I read the report in the local paper that was not factually correct in a couple of respects. This is the second time I've done it, so I thought I'd better come along and clarify some points. As already stated, this application is before you for maybe 2 reasons. One, because I'm a councillor, and 2, that the applicant, my partner, we're not married, by the way, is an employee of the council. In fact, even Aldclyffe Parish Council didn't object to this application. And to be fair, Cara attended that meeting, and although the Parish Council did make a comment, she pointed out that it was just one individual that made such a comment, and that was all. For many reasons, Cara, with my full support, steadfastly refused an application until the sea defence works were finished, and the application is in front of you as they are now all but done. When the planning inspector extended the time to a year to make an application, no one could possibly have expected the works not to be fully completed. But as you can see from the photographs, the important bits are all done. They even ended up leaving my gabion baskets in situ as part of the sea defences, a thing that I'm very proud of. I'm sure you've all read in the planning statement in detail and proves the photo montage, but just for clarity, the Blue Anchor Hotel already had a 5-bedroom owner's accommodation. The application is a change of use for part of the premises from a function room, and in conjunction with the garage, create an alternative 5-bedroom accommodation, and then using the old owner's accommodation to create a new 4-bedroom holiday accommodation. Hope that's all clear. The garage has been part of the owner's accommodation for 20 years or so. It was ironically an amusement arcade in the 1980s and has previously been granted planning permission for holiday lets. This application meets all the relevant planning policies and is so is policy compliant. It complies with EC9 and OC1 as stated in point 8.2 of the planning statement, and of course SD1 is in favour of sustainable development. This is a change of use of an existing in situ premises, so it could be argued that CC3 is not relevant. But just in case, the development is now being protected by £3.5 million worth of new sea defences and improvements to the old sea defences, and so is compliant with this policy as it is for policy NH9, as explained in point 8.7 of the planning statement. There have in the past been some unhelpful and maybe ill-informed comments made by some about previous applications, made by some people who maybe should have known better. But I would now argue that this is the most stable bit of coastal land in West Somerset, as it won't be affected by sea level rise. In fact, we now joke that the amount of rock armour that Somerset Council put in front of the old seawall, that the front garden is more likely to fall into the road. Mrs. Strom should be commended for having dealt honourably with the situation. With its last sentence, Mrs. Strom should be commended for having dealt honourably with the situation she has had to contend with at the Blue Anchor Hotel for the last 21 years or so. The passing of this application may finally be the start of the end. Thank you, and I'm here for any points of clarification.
Thank you very much. Okay, Andy's had a couple of comments. Any other councillors wish to make any comments? Sorry, Norman.
Just a point of clarification, really. On page 30, item 5, the manager's accommodation permitted shall only be used in connection with a business known as Anchor Drop. Now, I have no idea how wide or narrow that business is, and whether it is specific to this particular area. And if it isn't specific to this area, should it be tied in?
Okay, I'm going to turn to the planning officer and ask for a clarification on that, please, Brownie.
Sorry, just to clarify, you're concerned that the Anchor's Drop would be too broad for the managers. But, so the Anchor's Drop is the name of the Blue Anchor Hotel, the name of the Blue Anchor Hotel. So the condition means that only those who are involved with running the hotel should be living there.
No, I wasn't. I took it that the previous residents were tied up with the hotel, and that the Anchor Drop is possibly the holiday business name or something like that. There's no explanation that that is the case here. So the Anchor Drop is a new name that has come out. That's all. So if the business is to be tied, if the accommodation is to be tied with a local business base and enterprise, great, no problem with it at all. But if it's tied to a business name, the Anchor Drop, can it go further afield, still operate effectively as a residential unit when these holiday units are sold off, but he's got further holiday units somewhere else?
Okay, so in the planning conditions, are you satisfied that you have covered everything off to the satisfaction of our policies?
I believe so, and it's standard practice that we often tie things to the name of the building. It's never come up that they might have a building named that elsewhere, but like you said, it could be holding. We could include Blue Anchor into that, so, you know, Anchor's Drop, Blue Anchor, to really limit it down to that one location, if that would be helpful.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I better get hearing aids. I can hardly hear you. I'm sorry about that. It's probably my fault. The real nub of the matter is, if you're tying it into are you tying it into a business name, the Anchor Drop, or are you tying it into the actual place? That's what I'm trying to get at.
The actual place.
Sorry, that is the nomenclature for the actual place. Right, fine.
Okay, now Andy Sully proposed that we accept the officer's recommendation. Can I see a second of that, please? I'm sorry, of course. You didn't put your hand up earlier.
It was a bit late off the draw there, but just really a clarification. So the Anchor's Drop, it was called the Blue Anchor, wasn't it? And is it functioning as a pub or hotel at the moment? Just out of interest now. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Cravison. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. The Blue Anchor Hotel was called the Blue Anchor Hotel for 120 years, perhaps. It was always called the Blue Anchor Hotel. It had a brief rebranding when it opened for a couple of years, and Since then, we've rebranded it again to called Anchors Drop, which it basically includes all the hotel, in fact, the whole site. So it includes the caravans that are on site, includes the hotel bedrooms, includes whatever else is on site, whether the pub, etc. In fact, last when we operated the pub in 2022, we called it the Blue Anchor Anchors Drop. So, you know, but for clarification, I'm happy. I always imagine this condition be for the whole site, whatever they're being used for. I'm not planning on renaming anything Anchors Drop.
No, sorry, I was just interested, that was all. There wasn't been, yeah, it's just one of those places. I think I have been on the premises once in about 2017. You know, when someone comes up and planning, thought, I think I've been in this building once, yeah.
There's a lot of buildings around the old Somerset Western sort of area that I've been into one time or another. Quite a lot of them were hostelries. Okay. Sorry, any other councillors wish to comment? No. Okay, Norman, were you seconding that proposal? You were? Okay. We're going to move on to item 6 on our agenda, and I'm going to break with protocol because ordinarily I would not allow late submissions or late photographs. And the reason I am on this occasion allowing 4 photographs to be circulated is because actually they're very well balanced. They show the views at their best and at their potential worst. So because they are balanced, I'm going to allow them to be circulated. It's self-evident when you look at them what I'm talking about. So by all means, have a look at those photos. I believe they have been sent to the in the original application, but the officer may well be able to confirm that when you've seen them. Yeah. Okay. I just think they do offer a level of clarity which I think is useful. So on this occasion, I will break this protocol and permit them to be circulated. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. So when you've had a look, Ross, pass them on. Thank you. Councillor Wren.
Yes, I realise that when you requested declarations of interest, it went straight over my head, and I didn't declare that I have an interest in this particular application, in that I've been asked to support it, and I will be speaking in favour of it. Once I have done that, I will then leave the room.
Yeah. Councillor Wren, you are on my list as a public speaker on this. And I'm aware of your support for this application. And yes, we assumed you would conform with protocol.
I wasn't going to sneak back in and
no, quite
notice. No,
I never thought for a moment you might.
Thank you.
And Caro, when you've looked at the photos, I wonder if you'd be kind enough to hand the sheet to the presenting officer. I just want to make sure that the presenting officer has seen them as well. Kerry, good afternoon and welcome to the committee. Have you had a chance to look at the photos? Had you in fact seen them before?
No.
Okay, all right. Thank you. We're ready for your presentation whenever you're ready. Okay, you do need to get quite close to the microphone, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Can everybody hear me? Okay, great. I apologise, I've got a bit of a cough at the moment, so hopefully I'll make it through without coughing too much. Right, so yes, this is a listed building consent application for the installation of 18 solar panels at Little Fort in Milverton. Just to give you a really quick summary, the officer's recommendation is refusal of this application based on heritage grounds in relation to the elevated position of the application site, which is highway facing. We have suggested alternative ways of achieving the reduction in carbon emissions that the applicant is seeking, but these weren't successful. There are a few heritage assets which are primarily affected, I'll show you in the slides. There's a Grade 1 listed church of St Michael behind the site. The site's within the Milverton Conservation Area. Little Fort and Lancaster House adjoining are Grade 2 listed, and there are a number of non-designated heritage assets which are also affected on 4th Street. So I'm sure everybody knows what Milverton is, but so 8 miles west of Taunton. So this is showing the site location in the centre of Milverton. The red circle is the arbitrary location of Little Fort. This is a site plan of Little Fort showing the property and the adjoining grounds associated with the property. So this map is taken from the Milverton Conservation Area appraisal. The black line boundary is the conservation area boundary. The red circle again is the arbitrary location of Little Fort. And I have highlighted the heritage assets that have the potential to be impacted by this proposal. So to the north, 60 metres to the north, you've got the Grade 1 church. And to the south, you've got the non-designated heritage assets, which are located on 4th Street. And just adjoining to the east of Little Fort is the adjoining Lancaster House. So this map, I don't know how well you can see it, but it's a contour map essentially, which is intended to show the sort of elevated position of the church on St Michael's Hill, and the Little Fort is also located on that hillside. So this is the existing south elevation of Little Fort, and this is the proposed elevations, showing the location of the solar panels and the measurements of those. So this is photographs of the existing south elevation of Little Fort. And this is showing the position of the proposed solar panels. So these are photographs taken along 4th Street, just to the south of the site, and the proposed roof is visible here, just on the left-hand side, and also here. And this is just showing the location of the solar panels in those positions. Again, this is taken from the pavement on 4th Street. And you can see the roof of the proposed panels is here on the left, and here on this image on the right. And again, this is showing where the solar panels are proposed to go. So I think this is probably the key impacted view. Again, this is taken from the pavement on on 4th Street, looking north towards Little Fort, which is the roofs with the proposed solar panels are in this location here. This is a key view within the conservation area, which shows the visual relationship between the church and Little Fort, which is actually the former manor house in Milverton. So there's quite an important visual connection between the two buildings. And so, yes, so this is where the solar panels would be located, in quite a prominent location in that key view. So I have taken these pictures from Google Street View, because obviously when I did my visit in September, the trees weren't in full leaf. And I appreciate that there was a mention that when the trees were in full leaf, there would be a different perspective. But I think this image shows essentially this is the roof of Little Fort, and a similar picture to what the applicant supplied. So here's the roof of Little Fort where the panels are proposed to go, and again you can see the church tower next to it. And so here's just showing where the solar panels would go, and that they would still be visible when the trees would be in full leaf. So, so the officer's recommendation, as I said, is for refusal of this listed building consent application. And the primary reasons for this are that there would be visual harm to the setting of the Grade 1 listed church of St Michael. There would be visual harm to the appearance and character of the Milverton Conservation Area. And there would also be harm to the setting of the Grade 2 listed Little Fort and the adjoining Lancaster House, primarily. It's considered that the application proposals do not conserve, sustain or enhance the significance of these heritage assets, and that the application has not adequately assessed the harm to these identified heritage assets. Alternative options are available in the form of ground mounted array, which was put to the applicant and would essentially remove the harm that is presented in this proposal. Therefore, it's considered that there is no clear and convincing justification for the harm to the heritage assets. The level of harm is considered to be less than substantial, but is at the highest end of that scale of less than substantial harm. And this is still real harm. The benefits of this scheme are considered to be limited and essentially private benefits rather than public. And that essentially the harm is not considered to be outweighed by the level of public benefit, as the harm could be avoided entirely. So just final key considerations for the committee is that obviously the council has, in terms of legislation and policy, of a special regard to conserve, enhance and sustain heritage assets, their setting and local character and appearance. The council is obviously aware that it has declared climate emergency, but that any ways to tackle that climate emergency need to be appropriate and sympathetic adaptations, which is set out in various guidance and policies. And that importantly, that Historic England have guidance which essentially says that it's not considered sympathetic to the appearance of a historic building to have solar panels fixed in the main elevation that is most commonly viewed, essentially. And that there are alternative options, as I mentioned, that could essentially completely remove the harm to the heritage assets which this application presents. So that's it, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I have 3 public speakers on this item. I intend to call them in the following order. The applicant, Mr. David Woodland, followed by Councillor David Mansell, followed by Councillor Gwil-Wren. So, Mr. Woodland, if you care to come to the public speaking desk, push the right-hand button, the light will come on. When you're comfortable and you start speaking, your 3 minutes starts then. You'll have to lean over it for us to hear you.
A bit nervous, so standing up's better for me. Thanks. Can everybody hear me? I'm ready to go. Distill the policies and guidance, and it comes down to, would our panels look ugly and be out of keeping on the house and in the conservation area with the church behind? We say no, they comply. And that's because the pure black panels with no bright metal surrounds or inserts are an attractive and clearly modern intervention on the lower of Little Fort's 2 roofs and won't offend the eye. Half will be on an extension we built in 2006. The panels will all face the same way in portrait mode. We said no to extra landscape mode panels squeezed in along the top. So 2 simple oblongs that won't dominate the roof. They'll be completely invisible from the church and the churchyard. Can they be glimpsed through the trees? Yes, but only from a very small section of 4th Street, 60 metres away. Only the top bit of the church tower can be seen at the same time as the roof, and only for 15 metres. Then the tower is hidden by buildings, and only the panels will be glimpsed behind fruit trees for a further 15 metres. You've seen the pictures, I think. A few years ago, there was no view of the tower at all from 4th Street, and our roof was completely hidden. Many trees have been felled and blew down. Our neighbours say more trees are planned, but even now, the view cannot be described as a key view of the church. There are lots, this isn't one of them. There is no viable alternative place for the panels. The lawn isn't viable for 2 reasons. Firstly, the 4 solar companies that visited all said panels on the grass would only be 65% efficient. They'd be particularly ineffective in the shoulder months because the sun goes behind our neighbour's TPO yew tree to the south and our 2 big yew trees to the southwest. These green lungs are important next to the church and full of birds, including goldcrests and redwings too, in the winter. Secondly, this is a family home. We moved 150 yards to a world of restoration 19 years ago, solely because we had 4 sons and there's a large flat lawn. It's been used by swarms of children from the primary and Kingsmead for every manner of game, for social occasions and fundraisers, to cover this fantastic space with inefficient panels because of their placing. Taking more than twice the amount of room than the roof because of A-frame spacing would be sad and wrong. We invited Historic England. They didn't come, but pointed us to guidance which says listed buildings need to become more relevant, a balance between conservation and energy creation. This meets that objective. The panels will have no effect on the listed features of the house. If technology advances, great. The installation is reversible. The panels will remove some of our home's existing carbon footprint, helping to meet our personal aspirations to tread lightly, and the council's core objective to reduce the carbon output of existing housing stock. The Conservation Officer's report says the benefits would be largely private rather than public. In reality, any costs won't be recouped for at least a decade. And what greater public gain can there be than feeding power to the grid, helping to save the planet in a climate crisis? Thank you very much. 5 seconds to go.
Thank you. Anyone was thinking you practiced? Okay, Councillor Dave Mansell, please. Very welcome, as ever. When you're ready, your 3 minutes start when you start.
I get an extra 5 seconds if needed.
You don't get the 5 seconds now.
Okay, I'm confident we all agree solar panels are beneficial. They generate clean power, which reduces greenhouse gas emissions, which benefits us all. They will supply direct to the householder, reducing bills and surplus to the grid. Increasing renewable energy is a key action from the Council's climate emergency strategy. I believe the proposed panels are in the right position, and we've just heard good reasons for that. They will not be shaded, and they are designed to blend in with the roof. In my view, the panels would not harm the appearance of Little Fort, which of course is at the back of the building. It's worth noting that Milverton Parish Council, both division councillors, Grill and myself, and also a local comment from a resident who lives nearby, all strongly support this application. There are no objectors. The main concern appears to be their visibility and harm to the setting of a listed buildings in a conservation area, or at least the perceived visibility and harm. It should note that solar panels are permitted development in a conservation area. I live in a house in a more prominent position in the Wiveliscombe Conservation Area, which has had solar panels since 2009. To my knowledge, they've only attracted positive comments. Solar panels can also be allowed on listed buildings. Dunster Castle has solar panels. There are listed buildings in Wiveliscombe with solar panels, including on 5 properties at Abbotsfield, which was approved last May, where the officer report concluded the sustainable and reversible nature of the proposal is considered to outweigh the small level of harm in the setting of the listed building. Now, and there is one listed building in Milverton with 2 solar thermal panels, which I would say blend in less well. That's at Fort Gate, which is nearby and is also in the setting of the church. That was approved by Planning Committee in 2005. In my view, the solar panels would not detract from the appearance and setting of the buildings. It is also my view that they are not in a prominent position. Along much of 4th Street, as we have heard, they cannot be seen. In some locations they can be, but you have to look up high to one side, and the road, your direction of view is straightforward either way. You have to make an effort to look to the side and spot where the roofs are. It's not a prominent position. It's also important to be aware 4th Street is a narrow road, front doors on one side, direct onto pavements. On the other side, no pavement, but a high stone wall, trees planted in ground near the top of that wall, then another stone wall, and Little Fort is up high behind that. And you really have to, make an effort to look at it. It's not what I would regard as a prominent position.
Would you bring your remarks to a close, please,
I
Dan?
think I've covered the ground I wish to cover, so hopefully that
Okay,
does it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well. Okay.
Thank you. For indulgence, I'll seek to build on those comments that have been made. Now, the planning officer report talks about whether the development will conserve, sustain and enhance the building. Well, I think listed buildings, you ask yourself, why have they been listed? I mean, they are listed because they're heritage assets. They sit in their particular place and have been around a long time and they're worthy of protection. That doesn't mean, I don't think, that they should be conserved in aspic, because actually if they don't develop and they don't move with the times, they will start to fall down, they'll become unused, and that would be a terrible sin. So, for example, I don't imagine anybody would refuse permission to put a bathroom into a listed building, or any of the sort of modern boilers or things like that, or flues. And so, because solar panels are a manifestation of modern Britain moving forward, they're mandated, or they're certainly strongly encouraged by government. I think to refuse them here, I think would be unfortunate, because they will help to conserve and sustain the building by allowing people to live in them at, the cost of living will be better because of the solar panel. Solar panels also, of course, are temporary. We've started enough planning applications for solar panels, and been told that 40 years is a temporary application. These things can be taken off and removed away if better technology does arrive, but they're what we have for the moment. So I think that needs to be borne in mind. The extension Mr. Woodland mentioned, I'm not sure that's listed, and it's extension to a listed building, but half the panels will be on this modern extension, which is less than 20 years old. The conservation area report talks about the open area in the middle of the village, and the village is whilst the streets are quite tight, there is a lot of open space around the church, and I think to put solar panels on those open spaces, I think would be inappropriate. That's my personal view. Much has been made, or David Mansell mentioned other applications. I'll draw your attention to the decision at the New Inn in Hulst nearby last year, where they want to put solar panels on the roof. And whilst the addition of solar panels within the conservation area may have a visual impact, it is considered that solar panels are becoming a more common feature of roofscapes, and the benefits of renewable energy will outweigh the impact upon the visual amenity of the area. So I think we have shall we say, contradictory views of this. I'll draw your attention to the fact that the parish council is thoroughly behind this, and I think I will leave my comments there. Thank you very much. I now propose to leave the meeting.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Thank you for your contribution. Okay, whilst the room is being clear, I'll just make a couple of quick comments. One of the things Will said was he wasn't sure whether the extension that was built some years ago is listed. It is, of course, automatically listed as it is to a listed building. So that's an automatic revision at that time. I'd also point out that during the decision-making process, local planning authorities have to have a regard to conserve, sustain and enhance heritage assets and their setting, as well as the preservation of local character and appearance. The more important the heritage asset, the greater the weight should be. And that's National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 205. And a grade 1 listed church from conservation area are heritage assets of the highest importance. So we're talking about our view on the setting of a listed building within a conservation area next to or adjacent to a grade 1 listed building in a conservation area. So this is not a normal listed building because it's particularly attractive or of a particular time of building time. So there are a number of reasons why this is considered to be requiring planning permission, and your officer's professional opinion is that we should not grant it for the reasons given. Now, I'm going to open it to the councillors. Anybody wishing to speak? Ross, you caught my eye first.
In all the time that I've been on and off the planning committee, which is some considerable time, one of the common themes which has come to me, and this is not meant to be a judgmental comment, is people coming from Milverton Parish Council, quite rightly to be very impassioned regarding to maintain the architectural and the historical integrity of the centre of Milverton. And frankly, I have to say that I don't think this application does anything which would worry them. I am very encouraged by the support of Milverton Parish Council and the ward councillors as well. This application seeks to sort of encourage reduction to carbon footprints, and I think, as the comments of the parish council said, that should outweigh the appearance conditions. However, the appearance is minimised by the use of black panels. I think in the 21st century, well into the 21st century, we need to think back that television aerials were controversial at one time and they went on people's roofs. Then satellite dishes were incredibly controversial on people's roofs. And solar panels are still controversial to some, but they are part and parcel of everyday life now. I think the applicant has done something to minimise the potential impact of it. I don't think the impact is that great anyway. I think they're part and parcel of life. We must try to encourage applicants, I think, to reduce their carbon footprint. The fact that the Milverton Parish Council and other local good residents, the ward council supportive, I'm more than happy to be supportive, and I would actually move a recommendation of an approval for this application.
Now followed by Habib Farberhai, please.
Yeah, I would second such a motion. I know Milverton quite well. I go to a lot of events there. It is an absolutely gorgeous place. It would be no less gorgeous as a result of the installation of panels on this particular building. As we've seen, the householder seems to me to address this extremely sensitively in terms of the layout of the panels. I can see why you would not want them in your garden. I speak from experience here, and it would wreck the garden. So I just, given the photographs and given my knowledge of Milverton and given the fact that they'll be scarcely visible, even if they were visible, I just go, oh, they've been done nicely. Oh, how nice. The idea that they somehow negatively impact the conservation area or the heritage assets is I really beyond me. It does make no sense whatsoever to me at all. I also disagree that there won't be a public benefit. There's a very obvious public benefit from householders being enabled to actually switch from fossil fuels to renewable energy. That will be renewable energy going into the grid. That will be the carbon footprint of this area being reduced. We only have one planet. The basic essence of conservation should be to actually try and conserve the planet that we've got. And if we don't start allowing more solar panels on listed buildings, we are going to hell in a handcart. So there's no impact in my mind, negative impact on the heritage asset. It will help sustain the life of that building in important ways. If you can see it, I think it'll look funky and lovely and completely in keeping. So I think I'm absolutely in favour of seconding Councillor Henley's proposal. This should be given consent. I think it's a really good scheme, and I would congratulate the applicant on bringing it forward.
Okay, so Councillor Farberhai, please, followed by Councillor Hadley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I refer to 2.1, the proposal would be highly visible and harm the character and appearance of the Milverton Conservation Area. This committee approved 76 acres of farm near Milverton back in January. I think if you do your sums, that is roughly equivalent to over 250,000 panels. In comparison, this is only 18 solar panels. So the impact is, to me, is basically minimal. So I'm mindful to follow Councillor Ellis's and Councillor Henley recommendation and support this.
Councillor Hadley.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've got to be very careful not to endanger conservation areas, listed buildings. I think they do have a place, and I think we do have a case to protect these areas. That being said, the temporary nature of these panels and the fact that they can be reversed quite easily and taken away if the technology changes eliminates the worry that I've got that this is actually going to affect that area. So I think I would be minded to vote to approve.
Okay. Sorry, Derek Perry, followed by Norman Cole. Norman, you can go first, apparently. Norman? And Derek.
To echo what councillor Hadley has just said, conservation areas are very precious areas. I do believe that the impact here has been reduced to the absolute minimum from these solar panels, A, by the fact of their colour and type, and B, as has been said by both the applicant and by the planner, that they are within the slate roof space area. So they do not impact above the skyline and will have no further impact. So from one direction, they will not be seen at all. They'll be completely blocked out by the existing roof. And from the other, there is very limited view of them. From that point of view, as much as anything else, plus the other reasons that I've stated, I cannot see that this is particularly damaging to the conservation area.
Okay, thank you, Derek.
I think the truth of this is a lot of the guidance and the law can be interpreted in a subjective way either way. And it may be that over time, people's views towards solar panels as something that was perhaps once regarded as a bit out there and a bit alien is now changing. But it seems to me reference has been made to the Historic England guidance, which says that it's generally not considered sympathetic to a building's appearance to have a solar panel or other equipment fixed to its main elevations, that is the face or faces seen from the direction from which it's most commonly viewed. It says generally, so it clearly isn't a prescriptive description, which makes me think, well, in what cases might it be appropriate? It might be appropriate if the face from which the building is most commonly viewed is one where there is nonetheless quite a significant element of obstruction. And because of the limited view from that location, even though it's the most common angle of view, it isn't one which is particularly prominent in the grand schemes of things. That seems to me to apply here. So yes, you can see it. Maybe that is the most common angle for a member of the public, but you don't see it much because of the elevation of it and for the narrow field of view. There's then the fact that we know that these are panels which have been chosen sympathetically to blend in as much as possible, which might give another reason why this would be one of those cases where the presumption in the Natural England, not the Natural, in the Heritage England guidance doesn't apply. But obviously, for whatever guidance is, we have to apply the law, and that's quoted in the officer's report. There's reference to the listed buildings, the Planning Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act 1990. Obviously, section 66 and 72 come into play because we're dealing with a listed building and we are dealing with a conservation area. In relation to listed buildings, we must have special regard to the desirability of preserving the building or its setting or any features of special architectural historic interest which it possesses. Desirability of preserving the building or its setting, again, is a very subjective concept, it seems to me. And actually, given that this doesn't impact that much at all in the grand scheme of things, and arguably enhances it because of the positive wider effects, it doesn't seem to me that there's anything wrong with approving this when we have regard to section 66, section 72 in relation to conservation areas. Special attention should be paid to the desirability of preserving or enhancing the character or appearance of that area. Same applies really. Does it really detract at all? Does it enhance? I think we could argue that in fact it enhances and it has very little effect anyway. But for me, and it may be this ultimately is perhaps the key reason why this is an appropriate decision to make if we are going to allow it. We come back to section 16, which again is quoted in the officer's report, all about decisions on applications in relation to historic buildings. Any listed building consent shall inure for the benefit of the building and of all persons for the time being interested in it. Well, it seems to me that what's on the one hand is obviously a benefit to preserving the building, making a building more relevant, making it more efficient in a way which enhances the building and improves the building for people who are interested in it. I think we can argue all day long that this actually complies with that, and therefore there's a clear statutory footing for allowing this application, even if Some other people on other days might come to a different decision, but that's my view.
Okay, thank you. Before I bring anybody else in, I will remind members that we need to have clear reasons for going against policy. And you will have to articulate those reasons as to why you are going against policy if you are minded to do so. We need to be conscious of that. So we will need a form of words to progress this any further. If the committee is minded to go against the officer's recommendations. So you might wish to give that some thought. I think Derek's started to lead you in a direction, but you do need to understand we have to have reasons why we are going against policy. Okay. Any other members wishing to make some comments? Andy.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask maybe some sort of legal advice in terms of conservation areas, in the sense that I live at just off a conservation area, the Avenue, and there's lots of properties up there. They've got solar panels on the roofs. They're very old properties. So what is the, either you can or you can't, but obviously you can put solar panels in a conservation area. So is that what one of the recommendations by the officer was? It's a conservation area. So that's not a valid reason not to do it. Then can I get some clarity on that, please, Chair? Thank you.
So let me just double check. So solar panels have permitted development in certain situations. I have to double check what the specific details were, to be honest. Sorry, bear with me a sec. Okay. So solar panels, domestic or non-domestic buildings, are not covered by permitted development rights when installed on a listed building.
Could you speak in?
Oh, sorry, yeah. So in terms of permitted development, solar panels on domestic and non-domestic buildings are not covered by permitted development rights when they're installed on a listed building within the curtilage of a listed building or on a domestic building within a conservation area. And standalone arrays, it's different.
So what you're saying is that if property, the conservation area, wants to put solar panels on their buildings, they do not have permitted development. They have to get planning permission to do it.
Yes.
So that's right. What they're doing today. Then that's what we're here for. Right. Okay.
This is just a listed building consent application. Yes. The applicant hasn't currently submitted a planning permission application.
So this is listed, right? Not for planning, right? Okay. I've put it. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not actually going to argue too strongly that I don't think that the general drift of the debate this afternoon is not probably the right one. However, you are absolutely right to point out that in the face of the officer recommendation, which is quite clear, members have to have good policy reasons as to why they feel it is appropriate to approve this application. I'm sure it is perfectly possible to do that. And as you say, Councillor Perry has started to articulate some of the things that might be put forward. Nevertheless, I think you're right to remind us all
that there have to be good policy reasons for doing this, not the least that, although you take each planning application on its merits, precedents are set. And in allowing this application on this occasion, we must be clear as to why we think it's appropriate here, whereas it might not be somewhere else. The only thing that really gives me great pause is the statement that appears on page 35 and elsewhere. The council has worked proactively to assist with the desired reduction in the carbon footprint of the listed building and suggest an alternative, more acceptable form of the proposal. However, the applicant was not receptive to the negotiations. I'd really like to know a little bit more about that, because I think part of our decision this afternoon is to say, yes, actually, this is the only way that we can achieve this outcome sensibly here, and therefore we think that that is part of what makes it acceptable.
As I understand
if there is something that is perhaps better or more appropriate, I think we need to know that, or at least what the alternatives being put forward are, before we make our decision finally.
As I understand it, these alternative location suggestions, the applicant, I thought, said would entail quite a significant loss of garden, and the panels, because of their then orientation, would not be as efficient. So we would end up with more ground covered by more panels to achieve the same result. That's what I thought I understood you to say. Now, I'm perfectly happy to be corrected, but that's what I thought I'd understood.
So just to be clear, we're talking about repositioning panels elsewhere in the site rather than a different form of the panel on the roof.
Yes, yes. And my understanding was that the answer was technically they would need to use a larger number of panels, or a greater spread of a greater size panel, if not the different number, and they would produce less power because of their siting. That was my understanding. I'm quite happy to be corrected, but that was what I was given to understand. Norman.
I stand to be corrected, but I thought that the owner said the panels would be 65%, is what he was told, effective, and at a certain time of the year, positions of yew trees prevent sunlight and reduce it further.
Yes, I felt that was covered by my saying they would be less efficient and cover a greater physical space and less efficient. But as I say, I'm happy if anybody wishes to correct me. Okay. Well,
Can I just make a tiny quick comment?
We need to be clear what we're going to be voting upon, and we need to have good, solid, reliable reasons for doing so. So I would urge us to consider that for the moment and make sure we get this right.
Can I just make a tiny quick comment? The information about the reduced solar array and things for the ground mounted array, that information wasn't included in the application. And when it was discussed on site, the reasons for not including the solar array was that they could get damaged.
Was it in the garden though? I mean, I appreciate the technical information about the relative efficiency of a roof mounted array or a floor mounted array might be something that we've heard for the first time today. Is it right though that the alternative proposal was to put them in the garden in a way that would have taken up a significant proportion of the garden?
Well, I mean, obviously we didn't go into an enormous amount of detail, but when the site visit was carried out, the kind of advice was it would be less harmful to have ground mounted array, for example, in your garden or
Everybody's welcome to make a suggestion, do it.
Well, in terms of reasoning, I mean, I addressed the relevant sections of the statute. I think we can say, having regard to section 66, 72 and 16, although we've had special regard to the desirability of preserving the building and its setting. That really is a common theme for all of those sections. You know, the wording is slightly different. That actually, on balance, we don't feel that this would adversely affect the setting. And in terms of this particular application, that there are special considerations relating to the elevation, the view, which mean that the impact would be minimal, if indeed it is a negative impact at all. I think that sort of covers.
I think what Derek's saying is in planning speak, they say less than substantial harm. We talk about harm of the asset, and I've got often they say less than substantial. That can I check with the legal group? That is a planning term, less than substantial harm, from what the view of the committee have been saying. Thank you.
Although less than substantial harm appears to be less harm in terms of dealing with listed buildings and heritage assets, that is harm, and you have to give very serious regard to that harm in your deliberations.
Mr. Chairman, it's expressed in a very odd way, less than substantial harm, but it still means that there is harm, and you have to give reasons why you make a decision causing less than substantial harm. So it's a very odd way of expression, but you still have to give pretty firm reasons for overcoming it.
Well, this is of course because we take every single planning application on its individual merits. We need to be careful about setting a precedent. We need to be clear about why in this instance we feel it is acceptable to go against our policies. So we need to make sure we get this right. I want to make sure that the decision we make is sane.
And again, I want to refine it down. If we're heading in a certain direction, I think we could say that in the particular circumstances of this case, given the very narrow field of view, we don't feel there is harm. Okay, I think it depends on, if we're looking at the impact on the church, I think everybody recognises this is not a case of seeing the solar panels from the church. This is whether a certain angle of view of the church is made worse by the presence. So, in personal view, I think it's perfectly valid to say that that view of the church is not harmed by the panels. But if others feel that we have to accept that it is harm, it is not substantial harm in my view. But we're looking at that view because that's the most prominent view of the house, but that isn't clearly the most prominent view of the church. There are multiple views of the church. I appreciate it is a view of the church. I mean, it does seem to me we're going around in circles a little bit. All of the different bits of guidance and law are open to subjective interpretation. And in this particular case, we know that there's a very narrow field of view at certain times of year. It seems to me that deciding a balance is less than substantial harm. Yeah. Right.
Would it be helpful, Chair, if I just clarified on the setting? Yep. Okay. So the concept of setting is how a heritage asset is experienced and appreciated, both in the past and at the present time. And it's not just visual. It's also to do with how you experience that heritage asset. So in relation to, in this particular case, Little Fort has been found to very likely be the original manor house in the town of Milton. And it's therefore its connection with the church is quite important and forms quite a substantial part of its significance as a manorial complex. And so when you view the church and the manor house or the former manor house together, there is that forms part of its setting, because that's how you understand both the heritage assets as connected together in their primarily, I suppose, in the past. So yeah, that's in essence, that is how this particular view, what its contribution to the significance of both of those heritage assets is.
So. Yeah, as well as from and that from the public perception, and it also being virtually non. Do you want me to say? Yes. Yeah.
Going to pause for a couple of minutes whilst we try and get an appropriate form of words, because it's a very, very important issue. We need to make sure we get this right. And then we will have to yeah, I think we will take a 5-minute comfort break to allow everybody to assess where they are. Don't forget, when we come back, we will have to go against the officer's recommendation and then come up with our form of words. Stephen, I think our planning solicitor is going to come up with some appropriate words. Yes, please do comment.
Well, I was just muttering to myself, really, Mr. Chairman, but I suspect it needs to be something like, whilst the proposed solar panels will be visible from public land and visible in the setting of the church and other listed buildings in the vicinity, it is not believed that they cause harm to their character, appearance or setting, and moreover, the environmental benefits of the scheme are considered to be significant.
Less than substantial harm.
Well, so I think if it's something like that, then that gives us the basis of being able to. I mean, it's a difficult one.
It is difficult. I want to make sure that we
but there has to be something, I think, of that sort, which overhearing it, Mr. Corby seemed to be suggesting.
The wording right, because it's very important that we do.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question of the whole committee. Apart from myself and possibly a couple of others, have you all taken the opportunity to walk down the street? Have committee members actually seen the site? I mean, I know I have, and I know you have, because I've seen you in Milverton many times, and I know Ross has, because I've canvassed Milverton with Ross, so I know exactly where we are. Yeah, quite. Okay. So we are confident that we're comfortable that members have seen this. Okay, good. I just want to make sure we need to get this right. Okay, so. Okay, we're going to have that 5-minute comfort break now. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience and the more than welcome comfort break. We're just finalising a couple of sentences in the recommendation, which we will share with you all in a moment or two. Thank you. Right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Good afternoon. If we could all take our seats, please. We are getting ready to return. My apologies for the inordinate delay. But I want to make sure that when we get the wording right, we get the wording right. So we're at the stage now where we have had it proposed and seconded that we grant planning for listed building planning permission for this listed building permission for this application. And there is a form of words which my colleague is going to read out for us. So when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to try and read my own writing now, which is going to be a bit of a challenge. In the view of the elected members, having regard to this specific proposal, it is considered that the level of harm will be less than substantial due to the limited views of the proposed development. However, the harm identified would be outweighed, thank you very much, yes, I said I couldn't read my own writing. It would be outweighed by the environmental benefits of the proposal.
Okay, now, before we do anything else, the proposer was Ross, the seconder was Carrow. Are you content with that wording? Right, okay, okay. In that case, we are going to go to the vote on whether or not we overturn the officer's recommendation, and for the reasons that have just been read out, grant listed building permission for this application. Don't forget, of course, there will have to be a further follow-up planning application before this can happen. So it's this first step in this particular program. Okay. Does anybody want it read out a second time, or are you content? All content? Okay, can I see those in favour of that recommendation, please? Against and one against?
One against.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Choice. Okay. Thank you very much for your perseverance and your patience on that one, but it was really important that we got the wording right. Okay, so we're going to move on our agenda now to item 7, which is application 3/21/23/088, which is land off Seaward Way, Minehead. The planning officer is Russell Williams, and I think Wendy is also here. Yes, Wendy's here. So we will move on to that agenda item when you're ready, Russell. Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Just share the presentation. Sorry, slideshow, there we go. Yeah. Thanks, Chair. Members, good afternoon. So we have before us this afternoon application 3/21/23/088, and that's a planning application that's been submitted by the council itself for its own development, hence the reason that it's here before members this afternoon. The application itself proposes to vary 2 planning conditions on a previous consent, and that was application 3/21/21/015, which involved the development of 54 low carbon homes on land off Seaward Way in Minehead. So conditions 2 and 14 are the conditions that are involved here. Condition 2 is the list of approved plans on the original planning consent, and condition 14 relates to what is supposed to be the erection of cricket balls, safety netting or fencing to be erected along the southern side of the or southwestern side of the application site. So on the plan in front of you there, you can see Seaward Way is just coming in around the northern side of the application site. The application site is edged in red. Minehead Cricket Club is located to the southwest. and it's the position of the cricket club in relation to the site. It's the reason behind the need for ball stop netting to be erected. Just an aerial view again gives you an indication. Unfortunately, the latest aerial photography doesn't show the development which is currently coming out of the ground, and some of those units are nearing completion for occupation. Minehead Cricket Club house is just here, cricket field here, and the cricket square is in the central position of the field. It is along this southwestern side of the site that the ball stop netting fencing is proposed. So the application, in terms of condition 2 in the list of approved plans, permission is sought to vary the list of approved plans to change the height in certain locations of the ball stop fencing, and to actually bring the ball stop fencing into the red line area of the application site, because previously it was fractionally outside, and unfortunately that was missed by the officer at the time. So here is the approved site layout in effect. This is a boundary treatment plan which shows the various areas of low level fencing and higher level fencing, brick walls and so on. And it is along the southern or the southwestern side, although this isn't orientated correctly, that the netting would be erected. So here we've got an elevation which shows a typical section of this type of fencing that's to be erected along the boundary. And as you'll see, the length of it goes behind plots 1 to 10, I believe it is. And the height will vary, with the height behind plots 1 to 6 being 4.8 meters in height, and then plots 7 to 10 lowered to 3.6. And a section here, which is actually quite useful, because when you think about fencing being 4.8 meters high, it could be, you know, Her Majesty's Prison Service or the like, but it is in fact set much lower below the rear gardens of the units, which are being set up for drainage and flood risk reasons. So the fencing itself, there's approximately 1.8 meters difference in the typical section that's shown there. And you'll have closed board fencing at the back with the mesh style fencing at the higher level. So just show you some photographs. You'll see at the moment there's already palisade fencing along the entire length of the southwest boundary. You'll see here that the units are being built out and are progressing quite nicely. Just a little bit further into the site. Interestingly, you'll see that I think at Sandpiper Close here, there's ball stop net fencing in position, very similar height to what's being proposed now. Again, you can see that all the way along the rear boundaries. Once the planting and so on is established, that gives a good indication as to the kind of conditions that residents will be living in. And this is just looking back towards, you've got Minehead Cricket Club here, and the cricket square is on the left-hand side. And so key considerations for members, the principal development, in terms of the wider residential development for the site, that's already been well established through the previous grant of planning permission. The development's underway, and as I said previously, some of those plots are nearing completion. So in terms of the because this is a Section 73 application, it does in effect grant a fresh planning permission for the site as a whole. But in terms of the principal and the material considerations, there's no reason from a planning officer perspective to raise concerns in that regard. Impact of the proposed fencing upon the character and appearance of the area, over and above the previously approved fencing, there'll be a very minor material impact. In all honesty, parts of the fencing will be lower, some parts will be slightly higher, but it's in keeping with the fencing that, as I said, is in situ at Sandpiper Close, and with the palisade fencing that's been erected around the boundary. Again, it'll give a break between the two. In terms of the impact upon residential amenity and safety, this is the key consideration, really, to be perfectly honest with you. The ball stop netting or fencing was brought forward because previously, under the original planning application, Minehead Cricket Club raised concerns about the safety of residential properties and gardens and so on and so forth. And so the council agreed that they would commission a report from a a sports specialist to look at lots of technical information on cricket balls and speed of cricket balls, trajectory of flights should the ball be looking to clear the boundary, and so on and so forth. And at that time, it was determined that putting ball stop fencing up to a height of 4 metres along that boundary would be safe. And so the planning permission originally granted permission for the fencing to be 4 metres in height along the entire length of that southwestern boundary. As I mentioned previously, unfortunately, it somehow got slipped the net, shall we say, of previously, but the fencing is, no pun intended, but the fencing isn't actually within the red line boundary of the site. And so technically speaking, condition 14, which controls the delivery of the ball stop fencing, would be very difficult for the council to actually enforce against should it not be brought forward. What the applicant, the council, are now proposing to do is to bring the fencing onto the boundary line within the red line area, and therefore we can ensure that that fencing is delivered and that the safety of residents is obviously given the maximum protection. An updated sports report into the height of the fencing has been commissioned, and that has confirmed that height of 5 metres to the fencing along the entirety of the boundary would remove all risk, but that a height of 4.4 metres, along the boundary would reduce the majority of the risk in terms of, and the risk being the cricket ball clearing the boundary and potentially hitting a resident or hitting the window, or the danger in that respect. So what's proposed, as I open with, is that there'll be a 4.8 metre high fencing to the rear of plots 1 to 6, and then from plots 7 to 10, the fencing will be 3.6 metres in height, and the reduction in height is enabled by the orientation of the cricket square to those properties, because the flight of the ball when hitting straight down the cricket square towards plots 1 to 6, the ball distance will be far greater than hitting at an angle towards plots 7 to 10. So taking all matters into consideration, officers are content that in bringing forward the variation to the approved plans list and changes to the ball stop fencing, the amenity and safety of residents within plots 1 to 10 will be suitably protected, and that compared to what was previously considered as an acceptable impact upon their amenity and outlook from the gardens, the proposals are suitable given the change in levels that was previously indicated by the section drawing. So officers are content with the proposals. The recommendation is that the alterations, amendments to conditions 2 and 14 are approved. You'll note from the report that condition 14 is quite explicit in that the ball stop fencing shall now be provided and completed on site before the 3rd of May this year, and that's to ensure that those properties are given suitable protection before the start of the cricket season, and on that basis officers are recommending approval. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. All we have to do now is forlornly expect that Chris Gale doesn't come and pay a visit. Other than that, I think we'll probably be okay. I've got 2 councillors asked to speak on this. The first is Andy Hadley and then Stephen Pugsley, please, in that order.
Thank you, Chair. From the report, it reads almost as if the cricket club has refused permission to have the fence put up in their land, which I think I can understand the reasons, because they obviously don't want the maintenance issues. They don't want to be lumbered with a liability, which I'm assuming the council, being a council estate, is going to have to maintain that net. But it is a shame, considering we actually give them specific access to their golf club, to their cricket club, which they didn't have before, across our land anyway, as part of this application in the first place. So a little bit of give and take could have been worked out, and there could have been conditions that we maintain the let, even if it's on their land, which would have made things probably a little bit easier, especially for the homeowners who's not going to have the fence so close to their houses. However,
2020 hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Yes. However, it was approved before. It is being increased to cater for the change in distance and what have you. So obviously, I would be more than happy to propose this application.
I can't tell you, Mr. Chairman, what overwhelming pleasure it gives me to support the officer's recommendation. And I'm very happy to second it.
Ross?
Yeah, very supportive of the officer's recommendation. You would note from obviously the report, the positive comments by the England and Wales Cricket Board and the fact that Sport England have no objections to the proposals. So I would support the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go, Rosemary, did you wish to make a comment?
I think it's too late to actually say that this land is very low. And if there is any chance of having some more flooding protection on it, I'd like to say, put that to you now. I think you're going to say no.
I'll ask the officer his view. I suspect I know what it is.
Not as part of the application, no, from a flood risk and drainage perspective, everything remains as previously approved, points noted, but we are focused purely in the main on the changes to the position of the ball stop fencing and its actual detail in terms of its design, unfortunately.
But I think I'm quite in favour of not getting people's windows broken. So I think I would go along with this. But the whole idea of this land, it's too low. It's at sea level.
Thank you, Rosemary. Yeah, Derek.
Tempted not to ask it, but are we sure it's high enough, given that they were saying 5 metres for all risk? I know the reality is this is going to stop the vast majority, but given that it's straight down the wicket, they're quite close to the boundary, you know.
It's not in Kazoo.
Is it? I know you could always say go a bit higher, go a bit higher, go a bit higher, because there's always somebody somewhere who can hit a ball over now and again. But it's just when the recommendation, the report says 5 metres takes out all risk, be all with an asterisk next to it, I would imagine. And we're going 4.8. Just envisage a ball that just clears the fence one day and hits somebody on the head. And they say, well, it's only if you've got 5 metres. Is there a reason for going to 4.8 rather than 5?
I'm afraid without referring back to the Labour Sport report, I wouldn't know the reason for the change from 5 to 4.8. Wendy Lewis, who's the applicant on behalf of the council, may be able to clarify for us if Chair is willing to allow her. But
are you able to throw any light on this?
That's fair enough, I suppose. Go on.
yeah, sorry, if I just come back in shortly, briefly, sorry, there is also just a balance to be had between the amenity of and the outlook from the gardens and the overall height of the fencing. Admittedly, 200 mil wouldn't make a massive amount of difference in the grand scheme of things, but you know, the lower we can make it and balance that with the safety element, the better. As Councillor Henley rightly drew members' attention to, the ECB and Sports England are content with the safety factor, and I would always roll back to if this doesn't succeed, the other option is that there's no safety fencing, and then we do have a bit of a problem on our hands. So I think, yeah.
Okay, it's been proposed and seconded. Can I see those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please? That's unanimous. Okay. Okay, item 8 is the appeal decisions, which is Sarah. Would you like to introduce that one?
Thank you very much. There's only one appeal decision this time round. The inspectorate tend to bunch appeals together, so we sort of get them in waves when an inspector's been doing a bit of a blitz in the area. But as I say, we've just got one this time, which you'll be pleased to hear was dismissed. The site was at St Albans Bay Holiday Club. And it was for a change of use of 1 bungalow and 2 lodges to residential use, and the removal of potential residential use of 19 lodges. It was a delegated decision. The inspector identified one issue, whether the bungalow and the 2 lodges were in a suitable location for unfettered residential development, having regard to the local development strategy. And the inspector found the appeal site was located in the countryside, a significant distance from the closest settlement, and that walking or cycling to them would necessitate the use of a busy A road with limited footpaths and lighting. Whilst the inspector acknowledged the existing occupants may use a car, the units are tied to the management of the holiday park, which reduces the number of journeys to work. The inspector found the proposal did not satisfy any of the criteria in policy OC1 of the local plan, and other matters raised by the appellant did not override policy objection. There was no application for costs.
It's always nice when we win. Ross?
Just to make members aware on there as well is in relation to the unfettered potential occupation of the 19 mobile home units that they were trying to use as a trade-off for the unfettered occupation of the bungalow and the 2 chalets. The inspector agreed with the council's position that legally the 2 were not well related and they could not utilise the 19 to offset the 3. So I think that was a good position to get
Which
to.
was our considered view in the first place. So, yeah. So it's always nice when the inspector agrees with us. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Rosamond, sorry.
Only to say that this is one of the first things that was brought to my attention when I was elected, and I could see the point of view of the people that wanted the residential use changed because they have lived there for a long time in conjunction with their business, which they're now passing on. It was right at the time, but well, there you go. The inspectors overruled anything I would think. But we have to be aware that tourism actually comes with things that, you live in a place for a long time and you're working on a tourism site. Now, suddenly you haven't got that need. You can't do anything about it. So I think they have to be careful when they change. This was changed. I don't understand why we got 19 units. Something that Somerset West and Taunton did between West Somerset and Taunton. They changed the permissions on those. I think they must have done. I'm sorry, I'm only going on what I can recall. Why would they have had planning permission for residential on those 19 caravans?
Officers, can you throw any light on this, please?
Unless, of course, it was to do with Hinckley, which might be a possibility.
No, it wasn't. So the planning application was originally for change of use of land and for the stationing of, for the laying of 19 bases for mobile caravans. And no condition was put in place at the time to restrict the occupation of those mobile homes or caravans to tourism use only. And that was picked up upon by the applicant, who then correctly stated that those units could be occupied permanently year round by individuals. But the view of the council was that, be that as it may, the unfettered occupation of those 19 units, which we failed to control the occupation of, was not legally and well related to the unfettering of the manager's accommodation and cabins, and that in all likelihood, because of the nature of the mobile homes, the way in which the plots themselves and the hard standing areas for them are so densely positioned on the site, it was unlikely in our view that they're going to be occupied year round in any case. So yeah, and the inspector of course agreed with us.
I just say, I did have somebody come to me as well, which is a bit odd. I found it a bit odd at the time. They said, we've been here for so many years. Suddenly we've been asked to move in this for the, most people that are in tourist accommodation, they're told you've got to be out for 3 or 4 months. And suddenly they were asked to move. And I cannot recall, I'm sorry, who that was. I haven't had anybody come to me since.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your attendance this afternoon and your perseverance and your patience whilst we sorted that particularly difficult wording out. But thank you for your time and attendance and courtesy this afternoon, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. No, not, it's a little early even for me. Even for me. I was going to say I'm not starting a weekend tomorrow, sadly. Yeah, happy Easter. Yes, there's one. Take care all.